Tokyo, winter 2000. Back in her office, half a world away in Japan, and more than half a century later, Fumiko Ishioka remembered how the suitcase had come to her. In 1998, she had begun her job as coordinator of a small museum called the Tokyo Holocaust Center. It was dedicated to teaching Japanese children about the Holocaust. At a conference in Israel, Fumiko had met a few Holocaust survivors, people who had lived through the horrors of the concentration camps. She was astonished by their optimism and their joy in living, despite everything they had been through. When Fumiko felt sad about things in her own life, she often thought about these survivors. They were so strong-willed and wise. They had so much to teach her. Fumiko wanted young people in Japan to learn from the Holocaust as well. It was her job to make it happen. And it wasn't an easy one. How? She wondered, could she help Japanese children understand the terrible story of what happened to millions of Jewish children on a faraway continent over 50 years ago? Nove Mesto Namorave, 1938. Hana had blonde hair, blue eyes, and a very pretty round face. She was a strong girl. Once in a while, Hana would provoke a battle with George, just to show off her muscles. Even though her brother was 3 years older, Hana would sometimes emerge the winner. But most of the time, Hana and George played well together. In the summer, in the creek behind their house, they pretended to be in the Navy. Climbing into an old wooden washtub, the children sailed along until one or the other pulled the plug in the middle and they sank, laughing and splashing. There were 3 different kinds of swings in the backyard meadow, one for a small child, a 2-seater, and one that swung from a giant tree out over the creek. That fall, Fumiko traveled to Poland where many Nazi concentration camps had been located. There, on the site of the most well-known camp, she visited the Auschwitz Museum. Fumiko begged for a short meeting with the museum's assistant director. She was given 5 minutes to explain what she wanted. When she left the assistant director's office, she had a promise that her request would be considered. A few months later, a package from the Auschwitz Museum arrived. A child's sock and shoe, a child's sweater, a can of Zyklon B poisonous gas, and one suitcase, Hana's suitcase. She decided the best way to start would be through physical objects that the children could see and touch. She wrote to Jewish and Holocaust museums all over the world in Poland, Germany, the United States, and Israel, asking for a loan of artifacts that had belonged to children. She posted her request on the internet. She wrote to individuals she thought might be able to help. Fumiko was looking for a pair of shoes and for a suitcase. Everyone turned her down, telling her that the objects they had so carefully preserved were too precious to send to such a small museum, so far away. Fumiko wasn't sure what to do next. But she wasn't the kind of person who gave up easily. Just the opposite. The more rejections she got, the more dedicated she became. Because her parents worked 6 days a week, Sunday mornings were special for the family. When they woke up, George and Hana would snuggle up in their parents' bed under the fluffy feather comforter. On Sunday afternoons in the summer, they would all pile into the car and head off to the nearest fort or castle for a picnic, sometimes with Uncle Ludwig and Aunt Hedda, who also lived in Nove Mesto Namorave. In the winter, there were sleigh rides and long cross-country skiing adventures. Hana was a very strong skier. On the 8-kilometer run between Nove Mesto Namorave and a nearby village, which had a wonderful tea room with delicious creamy pastries, Hana always led the big family pack of cousins, even though she was the youngest. Sometimes, the neighborhood children would gather there for swinging contests. Who could swing the highest? Who could jump the farthest? Often it was Hana. In the long halls of their apartment over the store, Hana raced on her red scooter, George on his blue one. In the winter, Hana and George built snow forts and skied. But Hana's greatest love was skating, and she worked hard perfecting her pirouettes on Nove Mesto Namorave's frozen pond. Sometimes, when she wore her special red skating outfit, the one with the white fur on the ends of the sleeves, she imagined herself a dancing princess. Her parents, her friends, and her brother applauded both the performance and the dream. "It couldn't happen here, could it?" Hana whispered to her brother. "Right," said George. "If we talk now, they'll hear us and we'll be sent back to bed." One night, their neighbor Mr. Rott presented a shocking idea to the adults. "We can all feel that a war is coming," he began. "It's not safe for Jews to be here. We should all leave Nov Mesto na Morave, leave Czechoslovakia, for America, for Palestine, for Canada. For anywhere. Leave now before it's too late." The rest of the group was taken aback. "Are you crazy, Mr. Rod?" one asked. "This is our home. This is where we belong." And that settled that. In the evenings, after Hannah and George had been sent to bed, Mother and Father would sit by the radio and listen to the news. Often friends came and joined them, and they would talk long into the night about the news they had heard. "We'll keep our voices down," they would say, so as not to wake the children. The conversation of the adults was so intense, the discussions so heated, that they rarely heard the squeak of floorboards in the darkened hall as Hannah and George tiptoed to their secret listening post just outside the living room. The children heard the talk about the new anti-Jewish laws in Austria. They heard about Kristallnacht in Germany, when gangs of Nazi thugs roamed through Jewish neighborhoods, breaking windows in homes and stores, burning synagogues, and beating people in the streets. But by New Year's Eve 1938, there was a new and menacing feeling in the air. There was talk of war. Adolf Hitler and his Nazis were in power in Germany. Earlier that year, Hitler had taken over Austria. Then he had marched his armies into parts of Czechoslovakia. Refugees, people trying to escape the Nazis, started appearing at the Brady's door, asking for money, food, and shelter. They always found a warm welcome from Mother and Father. But the children were mystified. Who are these people? Hannah wondered. Why are they coming here? Why don't they want to stay in their own homes? Despite the bad times, the Bradys were determined to celebrate the coming of 1939. On New Year's Eve, after a feast of turkey, sausage, salami, and pudding, the children got ready to play the traditional game of predicting the future. Hannah, George, and their young cousins from nearby towns were given half a walnut into which they each wedged a small candle. A large basin of water was dragged into the middle of the room. Each child launched a little walnut boat into it. 11-year-old George's boat wobbled in the water, turned round and round, and finally came to a stop, lopsided. His candle kept burning. 8-year-old Hannah launched hers and, for a moment, it glided along without a quiver. Then it shook, turned on its side, and the candle hit the water and went out.